One of the things that I think I saw in the story that Betty Ann read to us today that I haven't seen before is it is a story of tenderness. Can you imagine the extreme tension that the disciples were living with, that Jesus was living with? And what he wanted to do was to gather with his friends and those who shared the journey with him. I imagine when they got safely into that room together, that was a tender moment. I was thinking about the kind of tenderness that would be in that room, because they knew there was trouble brewing. They knew that their safety was temporary. They probably knew that things had moved out of their control. Jesus knew that already someone who had been discontent in the inner circle was about to betray him. And yet when they got together, so familiar with one another, what a cherished moment that must have been. There's funny little things in this passage which I'll just draw your attention to. Did you ever wonder when it says that that when you see a man carrying a jug of water, that you should follow him? Did you ever wonder how would you pick out from all the people who are carrying jugs of water? How would you pick out the man you were supposed to follow? Well, that's because only women carried water jugs in that culture. And so seeing the lone man carrying the water jug, you knew who to follow. They knew who to follow. And so they set up this meeting. What did they talk about? Did they reminisce? Did they talk about how they should find a way to be safe? Did they talk about, should we leave Jerusalem even before? I bet they talked about everything. And also maybe nothing. Have you been in those tender moments when there's so much to say? But so little that you actually say? I always find this talk of tenderness quite moving. Because if you've been with, and we've all been there, with families who gather knowing that the person they gather around won't be there very long. The tenderness, the preciousness of those moments. I think that's what was happening in the upper room. I think it's a very human experience. And it is one that, for me at least, always brings a moment of tears. Because it is an acknowledgement of how precious and how vulnerable we human beings are. John Deere, who's a theologian, he said it is in the upper room that Jesus decided in the Gospel of Luke how he would approach what was coming. Because in the Gospel of Luke, unlike the Gospel of John that we preached from a couple of weeks ago, the story of Jesus being a kind of angry person overthrowing the tables in the temple, it happens very close to this story in the Gospel of Luke. And so John Deere, I like to say his name because it reminds me of a tractor, but he is in fact a theologian and a brother in the Catholic tradition. He says, in that upper room, as they engaged with each other, in that tender moment, precious moment, Jesus made a decision that he would not be violent again. He could have said, when they come after me, let's fight to the end. Let's shed their blood and preserve my blood. He could have done all those things that would have said, let's practice the ways of Rome. And let's take out as many of them as we can. John Deere says the fact that he didn't do that is a reflection of the kind of spiritual growth and movement that he had had since the turning over of the tables. And he was reconciled that if blood was to be shared, it would be it would be his blood. And so John Deere calls this the sacrament of nonviolence. And that we should hear in that Jesus' commitment to be in these difficult moments of life in a way that is nonviolent. I thought about that this week, and I know we're not under siege or anything, but there is this heavy weight of COVID-19. We've been trying to make decisions for the community of faith. We've been trying to listen to what the experts have to say. I was on a conference call with Dr. Bonnie Henry and Premier Horgan and the Minister of Health and on Wednesday, and they were really urging us towards adding caution to help them reduce the spread. Their goal is to preserve the health system, right? If if the spread happens here in a kind of unrestricted way, our health system won't keep up. So that's the goal. The churches were invited to participate with the health officials in whatever way we can. If we were in Alberta, they added a second thing, as well as groups over 250 don't meet. They added a secondary thing from their Minister of Health that groups of 50 or more who have international visitors, who are made up of seniors, or are groups with immune deficiencies, should also stop meeting. Right? So we're at this decision point. A number of people who aren't in the pews today are self-isolating. And I have to say that over the course of the week, we've had people in our wide community who have not self-isolated, who've been glad to get home from their cruise and have come on out. Right? So we're taking all this into consideration. The council's going to meet. When we end church, if folks want to hang around for a few minutes and just talk about this, I'd be quite open to do that. If you've got something that you'd like to add to the deliberations, I'm happy to hear from you about your opinion for the next steps for this community of faith. Okay? If you've got ideas, we want to hear them. It is a tender time. We're kind of on the brink of something and we don't know exactly what it is and how it's going to go. We're predicting our future. But here we are, gathered in our own upper room. We're safe. We're together. We reinforce and recommit ourselves to the kind of commitment that we have to each other. We're setting up a phone tree. I have to tell you that we recruited Marilyn Smith to help to get that started, because we don't have a better organizer than Marilyn Smith. So this week, you'll see the phone tree come in, because everyone is precious. And everyone is, this is a time for us to care for one another in whatever ways we can. So whatever decisions we make, we will continue to be in touch with all of us. We'll continue to be here to say, you know, if you get cabin fever, you can come here. We'll be here if you need groceries. And we've already had a number of people who've said, I could do groceries and deliver them. Okay? So let us be tender to one another. Let us find our way, but let us remember that the bonds of this community are strong and enduring and here for each one of us. Okay? Do I see a thumbs up? Perfect. What are we supposed to do next? Sing? We're going to sing something.